Trump is taking hydroxychloroquine. The tyrant governors strike back at freedom. Pelosi calls Trump something mean. Impeachment 2.0 could still happen. AG Barr dropkicks the deep state. Biden tries a nickname. The Me Too rewrite of history. The UN language police. And do you want Fauci on your underwear? Coming up.
A lot of good things have come out about the hydroxy. A lot of good things have come out. And you'd be surprised at how many people are taking it, especially the frontline workers, before you catch it. The frontline workers, many are taking it. I happen to be taking it. I'm taking it, hydroxychloroquine.
When?
Right now, yeah. A couple of weeks ago, I started taking it. Because I think it's good. I've heard a lot of good stories. And if it's not good, I'll tell you right, I'm not going to get hurt by it. It's been around for 40 years for malaria, for lupus, for other things. I take it. Frontline workers take it. A lot of doctors take it. A lot of doctors take it. I take it. Now, I hope to not be able to take it soon because, I hope they come up with some answer.
Welcome to the Buck Sexton Show, everybody. President Trump yesterday dropping the bombshell. That's not really a bombshell at all, of course. It's completely normal. I don't know why everyone's freaking out about it. But he is taking some preventative measures with regard to his health because he is the leader of the free world, because we need him to stay healthy in this fight. Hydroxychloroquine is something that he's willing to give a shot to, right? He's hoping that this will help him out. There's still some early studies out there that suggest, and this is what I had been told all along by doctors that I know who were treating people with it. I mean, we keep getting this media backlash to this drug, hydroxychloroquine, that we all know now because it's been repeated a million times. It's been around for decades. It's used to treat malaria. It's used to treat lupus and other conditions. We've all heard that stuff, and we know it. But the media still goes, oh, my gosh. He's promoting a drug that's reckless and unsafe. Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. Here you go. Here's Dr. Gupta on CNN, for example. Oh, what a surprise. CNN finds a doctor who's going to tell us that this is just wrong what Trump is doing. Oh, my gosh. Good heavens. Play 10.
The point is, Sanjay, that when you're the president, you can't just be concerned about your own health. You have to be concerned about the nation's health here. And there's an impact to what he says and does.
It's terribly irresponsible. It sets a bad example and maybe even dangerous. It is dangerous. I mean, people actually going out and doing some of these things. I think, when it comes to, for example, the mask wearing, we now know that there are people required to wear masks. He still doesn't wear one. But that may have contributed to the exposure Jonathan is talking about. I'm sure it did contribute to the exposure. Had people been wearing masks, they probably wouldn't be in this situation. If in fact, the president has had a significant exposure and now they're a little panicked trying to figure out, is there anything we can do? It's important to keep in mind that for several weeks, if not months, they've been talking about from the federal government ways to mitigate that exposure. That was not happening at the White House. I also think it's interesting with this hydroxychloroquine. Dr. Conley writes in his letter that we balance the evidence for and against hydroxychloroquine. There isn't any evidence to use it.
Oh my gosh. There is, in fact, evidence. It's not definitive, but there's certainly evidence that people have been citing, and there's early stage research on this that suggests that it is helpful as a prophylaxis, meaning you take it beforehand. You don't wait till you have it, and they may have, no surprise, the experts may have been wrong at the federal level when they said that they only wanted this to be given to people who were in hospitals and in effectively the worst stage of the disease's progression, right? Let's think about this for a second. If you're too far along with an antiviral and you're taking an antiviral, you've already had a lot of virus replication. And so perhaps that virus replication has gone beyond the ability of your immune system and even this additional drug to slow down, to stop, and to prevent the inflammation in the lungs, the other dangerous things. Now, Why are we even talking about this? Because the media, once again, is always looking for a way to be oppositional to Trump, even when it comes to something like this. Is he not allowed to make decisions about his health? Is he not allowed to say, you know what? I've decided that I'm going to take it upon myself to take this because I want to be as safe as possible for the American people, because I know that it's incumbent upon me. It's necessary that I stay in the fight because we're trying to get the country reopened. You have people who are just losing their minds. It's the most predictable thing in the world. They are losing their minds over this issue. Yeah, they had asked my friend Kayleigh McEnany about it yesterday at press conference. Oh, my gosh, the president and hydroxychloroquine. Play clip 8.
The president just wanted to be transparent about his personal health decision that he made in consultation with his doctor. And one of the things that I really want to get out there this morning that unfortunately there's a lot of misinformation about is, first, let me emphasize strongly that any use of hydroxychloroquine has to be in consultation with your doctor. You have to have a prescription. That's the way it must be done. That being said, I talked to the FDA commissioner this morning, Stephen Hahn. He said hydroxychloroquine has been approved for 3 other uses. We have a lot of information about the safety of this drug, though ultimately you make that decision with your doctor. So some of the misreporting on other networks, these apoplectic analyses of hydroxychloroquine ignore the fact that tens of millions of people around the world have used this drug for other purposes, including some people in my communications office who used it for malaria prophylaxis before traveling to other parts of the world.
I mean, this would be like if we were taking a standard, and some people do take a standard antibiotic with the hydroxychloroquine, they take azithromycin. It would be like saying, well, there are side effects. You know what, actually? It's not even worth going over. People that have a problem with this are just loons. They're loons. The president, in consultation with his doctor, he can't wait. Don't they understand? He can't wait to see if something better is on the horizon because we need the president to stay healthy now. And he is willing to try this very safe drug because there's nothing else better out there. I spoke to a friend of mine yesterday who was a frontline doctor, a frontline MD at one of the major Brooklyn hospitals that's been treating as many COVID patients, per capita, in terms of the size of the hospital. It's been, very, very high level of COVID patients. And here's what he said. I mean, I asked him about how the treatments are going, and I asked him about prophylaxis with Trump specifically. He said, always thought prophylaxis made more sense than treating an infection than was already there. Had some colleagues, meaning fellow doctors at a hospital, overrun with COVID patients. This is a guy who's been, a friend of my family's now for going on 15, 20 years. He said, once we found out the results of our antibody tests at the hospital, we felt our PPE and home disinfection routine were enough, but he did think that prophylaxis for some of them was worth trying, and they did. I also asked him about general treatment of this. I said, are you guys better at this? He said, we're capable of testing everyone who comes in. COVID is in single digits now when it comes to intake. This helps with triage and keeps hold the hospital COVID free because they can test everybody. In terms of treating, we're using the same things as before, but no signs of when to use what drugs, etc. Also, the staff is more accustomed to treating COVID patients, which certainly helps. So that's somebody who's been dealing with COVID patients all day, all the time for now 2 months. And he's saying that he had colleagues who were taking it as a prophylaxis because they were being exposed to so much virus. So are they being reckless? Oh, are they terrible people because they're trying to take this additional step to see? Is anyone who tries an experimental cancer treatment reckless? This is idiocy. But you got a lot of idiots out there. You got a lot of really stupid people who want to criticize those who want to take actions to try to keep themselves healthy when the medical community right now, just frankly, does not have the answers. They don't know what to do about this. They don't have a cure. They don't have an effective treatment. So we're trying treatments before we can prove them all the way through. And, I got to say, I was a little disappointed. I mean, I don't watch Cavuto's show, but he's had me on a few times in the past. He was a cordial enough gentleman. I don't know what got into him yesterday. He made a big deal of this when Trump made the announcement. This was Cavuto Show on Fox News, Play 19.
The VA study to which the president alluded wasn't a loaded political one. It was a test on patients there and those who took it in a vulnerable population, including those with respiratory or other conditions. They died. I want to stress again, they died. If you are in a risky population here and you are taking this as a preventative treatment to ward off the virus, or in a worst case scenario, you are dealing with the virus, and you are in this vulnerable population, it will kill you. I cannot stress enough. This will kill you. So again, whatever benefits the president says this has, and certainly it has had for those suffering from malaria, dealing with lupus, this is a leap that should not be taken casually by those watching at home or assuming, well, the president of the United States says it's okay. Even the FDA was very cautious about this unless in a clinical trial safely and deliberately watched. I only make this not to make a political point here, but a life and death point.
He doesn't know what he's talking about. And I mean, he really doesn't know what he's talking about. He hasn't even spoken to people with expertise in the subject matter to understand the difference between taking something to prevent infection versus taking something once the infection has already completely established itself. People, for example, that are trying to avoid HIV infection will take something called PrEP, which is meant to prevent the viral load in your body from establishing an ongoing infection. And that's, I think, something that now, as we see how we might be able to use this drug, it might be in that capacity, in that context. But, I mean, this turned into the biggest news story in the country yesterday. We have so many other things to focus on. I have a little more on this. I mean, Pelosi took a swipe at Trump over it. Of course, you know, the morning morons over at Morning Joe. There are people that are just using this as another opportunity to show how much they hate Trump and how awful he is. So we'll dispense with them briefly, and then we'll move on to, like, how do we reopen the country? How are we doing state by state? What do we know about the actual risk from the disease? A new study out from Professor Ioannidis out in California at Stanford University Medical School that I think you'll want to hear. He's got a real, based on the actual data, what this is, and he lines it up against the flu. So, I mean, and which one is, and how much more dangerous is COVID-19? I'll have that number for you. So we've got a lot more coming.
As far as the president is concerned, he's our president, and I would rather he not be taking something that has not been approved by the scientists, especially in his age group and in his, shall we say, weight group, what is morbidly obese, they say. So I think it's not a good idea.
Whoa, hey, Nancy, whoa, settle down. That was a little rough, okay? Look, the Trumpster, and I'm not throwing stones at anybody ever on this issue, but especially these days with my diet of gluten-free mac and cheese and ice cream, and I've made a lot of banana bread recently, too. Let me tell you, homemade banana bread is easy and delicious. But Nancy, I mean, you know, the Trumpster likes a good cheeseburger, as do the rest of us. And, you know, yeah, he's not about to win an Ironman competition, but, I mean, morbidly obese, come on. I mean, producer Mark, right? This is not Nam. There are rules. Like, that was unfair.
It was a little much.
You know, I mean, technically, medically. Look, first of all, there's some people who are doing a lot of pearl clutching over this. I think it's funny that you can go on CNN and say that it's not supported by the science, which is just not really true. That's an inaccurate way of describing what's going on here, and call the president morbidly obese. And Anderson Cooper's like, meh, yeah, it's fine. Guess CNN is disgusting and has no reputation to protect anyway. But look, Trump dishes it out. You know, Trump is going to take it too sometimes. And I mean, I think that Pelosi, what she said is absurd. And I mean, it's wrong. He's not morbidly obese, from what I understand, is, if you look up the definition, is 100 pounds overweight or over 40% BMI. And that's when, and they have this term, I mean, morbidity, because it becomes a major health risk when you reach that point. Trump weighs 240 pounds, according to the interwebs. All right. I mean, do we believe that one, producer Mark? What do we think?
I think that's a little low of an estimate.
I mean, I would have said 260. I would have said 260. But the internet says 240. And so who am I to judge? So, but let's say it's 250 just to kind of split the difference. Trump is 6'2" or 6'3", and there's no way that he's. And look, again, I don't think that it's Pelosi has committed some cardinal sin. I mean, look, he calls her like a drunk moron all the time, right? I mean, this is very clear that these two don't like each other, and if Trump is going to get personal with people, they're going to get personal back with him, and this is now the environment we're in. And I think we were in this environment before. It's just Republican just took it, and we're like, oh, I'm going to be a good boy and not fight back. But Trump is like, nah, I'm going to fight back. But if you were to do the math on this one, if Trump is 6'2", 6'3", there's no way that his ideal weight would be, if you do the 100 pounds overweight, that his ideal weight's 150 pounds. A 6'3" man who weighs 150 pounds is going to be a stick. Right, producer Mark?
Yes.
Right. That's too skinny. I mean, even at my height, weighing 150. Let me tell you, I don't weigh 150. And this hit a little close to home too. Pelosi's throwing around the obese term, like, whoa, Nancy, come on. We're all in quarantine here. We're nesting. We're spending a little more time on the couch. Can't go to the gym. So we've all put on a few. But let's not get crazy. Let's see where we are in the fall. We got to give ourselves the summer, hopefully open, hopefully without the tyrants running around telling us that we can't do anything. Give ourselves the summer and see where we are. Right, producer Mark? You and I, we were gonna get in tip-top shape. Not our fault that they made us stay home and eat groceries all day.
Exactly. As soon as the gyms open up, I'll change things.
Exactly. That's what I keep saying. I mean, Papa Buck's going to bring back the six-pack as soon as they let him go into the gym. And, okay, man, not bring it back, achieve one. But I'm saying I'm going to get there. But for right now, oh, Nancy, you are, you are shameless. I think it was an entertaining moment just because it shows you how much she hates. She really despises the president, and he really despises her. This is not a game. They really don't like each other. And you could tell when she let it, she's like, morbidly obese. She really enjoyed saying it, right before she knocked back a fifth of Popov or Chopin. She probably drinks Chopin, let's be honest. She's not a Popov drinker. What is the cheapest vodka, producer Mark? Like, what was when you were in college, what did you guys drink?
Probably Svedka.
Yeah. These Russian sounding names, they're all made in like the back of some parking lot next to a McDonald's in Massachusetts, but they give it a Russian name. Oh, it's very good from Russia. It's made from potato. No, it's not. Some guy named Phil behind a Citgo station who's running the still. That's what it. Phil who runs the still. All right, let's get into real stuff. The lockdowns and beating them. That's coming up.
In terms of enforcement, NYPD will be out, Parks Department will be out. Obviously, first and foremost, to help make everyone remember, don't go in the water. You're not supposed to go in the water. It's a dangerous situation to ever go in the water when there's not lifeguards present. So there'll be a constant reminder of that. If anyone tries to get in the water, they'll be taken right out of the water. So we want to keep people moving. We want to make sure nothing gets too crowded. Don't want to see the boardwalks crowded. Just classic social distancing. I guess I shouldn't say classic because it's something we've only dealt with for a few months, but it feels like it's been a long time. We understand the basic concept of social distancing and crowding, and the NYPD will always work to avoid crowds and gatherings. So they'll be out, and Parks Enforcement will be out.
This is so dumb. And you're hearing it, you're seeing it from blue state governors across the country. Blue states are completely and utterly insane on this stuff. I don't know what the heck is wrong. Well, we talk about what's wrong with them all the time, but you can't go in the water. Why? Who's going to get coronavirus in the water? What are we even talking about here with this idiot? But it's not just for those of you who are like, yep, Buck, that's right. New York City, stinks. You got New York stuff going on there. you got this in a lot of other places, too. Jay Inslee, governor out in Washington State, who's like, oh, we're going to defeat climate change. This guy's a loon. Everything's climate change, the most important thing in the world. This guy is like seriously, it's like he's founded some bizarre cult. Well, climate change catastrophism is a cult, so I guess maybe he's a high priest in it. And he's now telling everybody that people are to, quote, quarantine immediately for 14 days upon experiencing first symptoms, including entire households. And he's got a statewide contact tracing plan for COVID-19. Quarantine first symptoms? 50% of people are asymptomatic, so start with that. And what are the first symptoms? You have a little bit of a sore throat. You have a little bit of malaise, a little bit fatigued. For a lot of people, what are these symptoms even going to look like? My friends, they keep thinking if they clamp down with even more control, then somehow we'll be safer. Do they really believe that, or do they just want more control? With the numbers getting better, with fewer people dying, fewer people going to the hospital with every passing day now, they are still clamping down and fighting so hard against the beginning, the first phase of reopening. You also have in Illinois, Governor Pritzker there. He is saying that he tried to ram through an emergency order that would sanction misdemeanor criminal penalties if a business opens and says they can. You're seeing this now. You got the gym in New Jersey. You got barbershops. Everyone's kind of interviewing these first folks who are willing to open up and say, look, I don't care. I'm opening my business. I'll tell you this right now. If I could go get my hair cut, I would do it tomorrow. I'm not worried about getting COVID-19, and I'm not worried about spreading it. All right? If I have to wear a mask in the barbershop, fine. But, this is absurd. This is absurd. And the damage that has been done to people, and people have lost their jobs, their futures, their livelihoods. I know people who have not just furloughed, fired from their jobs because companies are hemorrhaging cash. Their businesses are entirely shut down. And, the people that are at the top, the people who are the corporate officers, they'll make sure that the government the government programs flow to keep the basic structure of the company open. But there's still massive layoffs. There's still people who aren't going to be able to get their jobs back. It's appalling what's going on right now. Absolutely appalling. But this is what we see. This is what's happening. The destruction that is being wrought state after state. And start with this. Let's get down to some very straightforward concepts here. How will we be in a better position in Illinois, in New York, in California? God bless you, Florida and Georgia and Texas, states where people are like, you know what? Freedom still matters. But in those other states, we're going to be in such a better position in a few weeks than we are now. Based on what? The difference between opening and not opening in New York into phase one is a couple of 100 empty ICU beds, for example. So if we had an additional 200 ICU beds in a city of over 8 million people, then we could, but we can't open yet, and it might take a couple more weeks before we can. Where did they come up with this number? They just made it up. Just arbitrary. Are we not going to have any possibility of virus transmission in 2, 3, 4, 6 weeks? No, the virus will still be out there. And as I've been telling you, we need to open up as fast as we can and get as much going as we can, because they're gonna try to shut us down again right in October. Shut everything down in October, going to the election, and the markets will tank, and then businesses will really panic because, well, we're now gonna shut down every time there's something out there that is dangerous to our health. Well, we've always lived with things that are dangerous to our health. This is not an existential risk to society. The virus is not an existential risk to society. The government's response to it, unfortunately, is. This is wrong. What they're doing is wrong. They've made an enormous mistake. They've done incalculable damage to us. They have already shown a willingness to run roughshod over the Constitution, common sense, and our basic rights? And do you see any humility from the people making the decisions here, from the petty tyrants? Do you see any sense that they understand the limits of their own comprehension, the limits of their cognition, and how they can't see the future? They shouldn't be making these kinds of determinations for all the rest of us. No, you see de Blasio saying, if you go in the water, we're going to pull you out of the water. Oh, that's great. Anything else he wants to let us know? Complete morons running many of the largest states in the country. I mean, real statist, totalitarian-minded, petty tyrants. That's what we've got. And it's a shame, because if we had people that were more willing to look at what's really happening, we'd be in a much better position than we currently are. If we had people that would make decisions based upon common sense, everything would start to seem like it was moving in the right direction. But they really do want to slow us down. And they want to squeeze as much as they can out of all of us. The government wants to squeeze as much as they can out of us, right? This is now, isn't it so circular? They shut down the economy. And then in order for us to get the basic funding we need, this is what the Paycheck Protection Program, to keep these businesses alive, and a lot of them are never coming back, and we all need to understand that right now. There's going to be mass unemployment that lingers far beyond the reopening, and there's going to be a tremendous amount of finger-pointing over this, and I have told you this before. They got Trump to bend the knee, and they finally, and he was Herculean in his ability to withstand all this stuff, but in year 4, they got him to bend the knee by extending the shutdown. And they had been building to that. That's what they wanted. That's what the media wanted. They got their wish. And now we're in a tough spot. We're in a tough spot, not just as a country that is hemorrhaging millions of jobs, that is losing businesses, but also the idiot left knows that they have finally gotten a real shot in on this administration, one that could linger, one that could really do damage. And they're going to try to use this to the best of their ability in the fall and squeeze as much out of this in the process as they can. This is what this Pelosi bill is. Mitch McConnell talked about the HEROES Act. Here's what he said. Play 22.
The 1,800-page doorstop that Speaker Pelosi dropped last week was appropriately greeted as the legislative equivalent of a stand-up comedy. There were tax hikes on small businesses in the midst of a small business crisis. There were targeted tax cuts for the wealthiest people in the bluest states. In sum, a $3 trillion wish list slapped together in a clumsy effort to never let a good crisis go to waste. Serious work here in the Senate, partisan pointlessness over in the House.
1,800 pages. I doubt Pelosi read 8 of those pages. 1,800 pages. You know what that is? That's when you have all these different special interests that are working with the staffs on Capitol Hill to just give them exactly what Mitch McConnell said, the giant progressive wish list. We want all these goodies. Look, my friends, this is now almost entirely a political fight. We see that we can go about our lives, we can live, we can go in the open air, we can start to enjoy freedom again. People want to keep you from that, and it's not for your own good anymore. If it ever was, it's not for your own good. So get ready for it, because we are going to have to dig in. The other side is determined. They're crazy, but they're determined. And they view this as their chance to wrest power away from the Trump movement and to enlarge, to engorge financially and just from a pure power perspective, the federal government and state governments. And we'll be living in a very different country, a country where the relationship between citizen and state has been altered for all time. That's what we face right now, unless we start saying we have learned this lesson and this is never happening again. No second shutdown. So what's the scene like across the country? We can get some insight about how things are going in Florida for sure from our buddy Rogan O'Handley, who is joining us now. He is better known to folks as the political commentator, and I like to say meme czar or meme superhero, DC Drano. He is now with us. Rogan, a.k.a. Drano, great to have you, man.
Thanks for having me on, Buck. Big fan of your show.
So how are things going in Florida right now? You guys are in a state of reopen. Are the beaches open? Just bring us down to the scene there.
Yeah, I mean, it's constantly evolving, and it's county by county. Southeast Florida and Miami and Palm Beach has a lot stricter lockdown regulations than where I personally live, which is Central Florida on the West Coast in the Tampa-St. Pete area. Beaches are open. Restaurants are open, about 25% capacity, which is not being strictly enforced. And you have to try to find someone with a face mask on in public.
Well, that's good news that people are actually obeying the science in a sense instead of obeying the dictates, because as we know, the chance of getting this in open air from casual contact walking past people is effectively zero. But what do you think about how, what are we seeing now just at a macro political level? Are people waking up to the tyranny in some of these states, to the stupidity of the nanny state? Or do you worry that the prevailing or the consensus will be, yeah, well, if we have to do this again, we'll just lock down again?
I don't think we're gonna have the level of trust that we gave our institutions next time around, especially media and state government. I think President Trump has done a fantastic job, but I think a lot of these blue state governors have gone way overboard, and they've politically weaponized the entire pandemic at this point. Went from flattening the curve to now finding a cure to now never going back to normal. And I think the special election in California's 25th district was a big wake-up call to the left. If the UK election wasn't a wake-up call, this 25th district should have been. And I think that's going to continue to happen.
Rogan, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we actually haven't really talked about what happened in the 25th district. So you just give us a quick run on what happened there?
Quick rundown is the 25th district encompasses North LA and a bit of the Valley. I'm used to live in LA, so it's not quite in the center of the leftist chaos, downtown LA, but it does encompass some of that. And that seat was held by Katie Hill, who, as you know, resigned in disgrace over her affair allegations with a staffer and the very salacious pictures that were leaked. And the district used to be held by a Republican, but Hillary Clinton won the district in 2016, I think by 6 to 8 points. And then Mike Garcia just flipped that district, and he won by 10 to 11 points. So we're looking at almost a 20-point swing.
What do you attribute that to? I mean, that is good. And we got a big audience out in KEIB, Los Angeles. That's our station, our affiliate out there. So what happened in that area?
I from what I'm hearing, a lot of it's anecdotal. You're not going to get a lot of data on the fly with all this as it's evolving. But I've talked with so many friends in Los Angeles that said this is their breaking point. They're out. They're leaving. They're moving. No more of this. And so I have to imagine that sentiment is held by a lot of people out there. And listen, there's a lot of people that grew up there. That's their home, and they're going to fight back. And I think California, I think the left is losing their independence. I think, independence went 2 out of 3 for Mike Garcia. And if that's happening in Southern California, nationwide, watch out, Democrats, watch out.
We're speaking of Rogan O'Hanley. Those of you who are on Instagram certainly know him as the one and only DC Drano, who even got brought to the White House for his meme skills. What makes a great memester, Drano? How can, for the folks out there listening, they often say, Buck, I want to do a podcast. And I say, okay, do a podcast. Step one is do a podcast, see how it goes, right? But I mean, if you can give anyone tips, because I think the one of the great sort of creative moments of the Trump era is unleashing folks like yourself with the web, with the free marketplace of ideas of these memes, which I'm saying are the new political cartoons. If this were like the 1880s or the 1920s, memes are the political cartoons of our day, which can have a lot of influence. How do you see it, and how does somebody get into it?
Like you said, you just got to do it. For me, it was that I thought memes were arguably the most effective way of communicating to people in our country under the age of 40. Few things impact the culture more. I noticed years ago when pizza and wine memes were all the rage on these comedy pages. And then I started noticing in my daily communication with people, people were making these pizza and wine jokes. I'm like, all right, so this has a lot of influence. For me personally, I think what works best is hitting on current issues. You don't want to get into the boomer meme category where you're talking about, big government, is bad. Like, all right, we know that. But hitting on hot button cultural issues that are happening, preferably that day, and it drives home a very valuable point that other people aren't necessarily making. You don't want to copy others. You don't want to imitate. You want to be original. And it's a way to say a lot. You know, we're visual creatures, I think, when it comes down to it. We all love movies, TV. So find an interesting, funny, or gripping way to convey a point through the use of pictures mixed with words. And that's all it is.
If the Trump movement has a meme czar, my friends, I declare it is Rogan O'Handley, a.k.a. DC Drano. Rogan, great to have you, man. Everybody follow him on Instagram if you're not already. See what I'm talking about. And Rogan, stay safe. Enjoy your freedom down there, which you have, and I don't up here in crazy New York, but enjoy it.
Thank you. And I aim to show as many people around the country as possible that freedom is back in Florida and other states. You know, I posted that video of myself at a bar, restaurant a few nights ago. President Trump retweeted it. Nobody was wearing a face mask. I feel totally fine. This disease barely affects people under 40. So let's follow the data and let's reclaim our rights and our freedom.
All righty. Rogan, thanks so much. DC Drano, everybody.